I'm a journalist, but I've gotten really interested in the idea of passive job seekers because HR professionals use that phrase really differently. So I want to talk about how I've come to understand it and what we think is actually changing about that. As Bruce said, we report on things. This is right now what we talk about passive job seekers. They're like people who work somewhere and I'll take an offer from you. That's always been the traditional view of passive job seekers. Active job seekers looking for jobs, passive job seekers aren't, and that's kind of the end. That's the divide that I assume most of us traditionally hold. So that means we just bother passive job seekers. That's the end of our relationship. We bother them and ask them 47 times, will you please take this DevOps job? And they ignore you, and we get mad at them. And that means that we say a lot of bad things about passive job seekers. We say that they ask for too much money, that they're going to leave really soon. These are all the complaints we make about passive job seekers because we have a really bad definition of passive job seekers, and that shouldn't be what we actually think that they are. In the category that my bud Chris and Dudley was talking about, employment branding is really where all passive job seekers lie. You want to be talking to people who don't even know they could work for you yet, for roles that you might not even be putting up for yet. That is what a category of passive job seekers are. We know in the TA category that so many of us talk a bunch about, employer branding is that top category. That's where you play with people who don't necessarily know they're looking for a job, but if they're following your organization, they might want to join at the right opportunity. In the category of how hard it is to attract people, we know that the one-to-many, most indirect way to do it is to build a narrative that a lot of exciting, thrilling people follow and care about what you do, even if they're not already applying for jobs, and they'll stick with you. That's a passive job seeker strategy that I get excited by. We're two news organizations, Technically and Generosity. We don't do this stuff. Traditionally, we reported on a whole lot of organizations that we thought were most interesting, and they were talking about how they have long-tail relationships with job seekers. Now we're doing it ourselves. And the big move is all of us usually focus on A, anyone who's qualified for the role, actively seeking a job, and their mission aligned to the work they want to do. Move slightly over to B, and there's a lot more people. Those are people who are just qualified for the role and care about what you do. Here's a portion of our team, everyone with a red circle. Those are people that were not actively looking for jobs when they applied for us. They saw a role, they were following us as an organization, they thought we were doing interesting work. They applied for roles with us, even though they were rather happy with where they were. So I think the definition of passive job seekers has to change. It's what passive job seekers are doing for themselves, following organizations they care about, as opposed to what's being done to them, tapping them on the side of the head as frequently as we possibly can. That's how passive job seekers should be defined. We've done a lot of reporting on this. We did a little ebook thing with talking about 200 organizations across the Mid-Atlantic where we report, and surprise, everyone we thought was interesting was essentially talking about a passive job seeker strategy that was underemployment branding. I want to share 3 of them that you actually can do. You've heard of this, create followers. This is Vanguard's employment page. You can do a follow us button. We've seen a lot more organizations do this. These are the people that are not necessarily looking for a job. They want to hear about potential jobs of the future. Answer the question, how could prospective employees follow you right now? Have an opt-in strategy. We did a little test this summer. We just put a call out in a tweet. 600 readers of ours gave us their resumes when we said that we would match them with a company that we thought might be a culture fit. More than half of them were not seeking jobs. That's crazy. You got to get your staff out in the world, not just HR, not just recruiting, but your staff that does interesting work. This is a Baltimore firm called SmartLogic, tracked every pizza they donated for 5 years at meetups because that's how they did most of their recruiting. Build the minor leagues. This ties to a lot of what we heard tonight. Who are you going to hire in 5 years? Amelia's work with mentorship is dead on this. You can do mentorship work that also is about long-term passive job seeker strategy, keeping fans through apprenticeship programs that might be future job seekers. And then ultimately, you got to tell your story. This is also really familiar to all of you, but I think we got to see it a little bit differently. You all in your organizations have some sort of customer lead marketing strategy. You need the same conversation for your employees as well, prospective or otherwise. What the heck did I say? Passive job seeking definition must change. It's about people who are following you in an employment branding category. Employment branding is exactly how you will reach them and building relationships that matter. And we got to do it better. Essentially, I think that is letting people know letting people know they want to work with you before they even realize they can, like half of our team. And they'll be there for longer than people who are active job seeking is the early data. That's us. We think this is smart. We'd love to cover your organizations if you're doing that work. We also would love to talk to you about it. Thank you to everyone.